And Julio was already a huge star in Latin America, singing Spanish, and we got to sign him because we had a little girl called Vicky Leandros who won the Eurovision Song Contest, and she was signed to CBS in Germany. And Vicky was managed by her father, and her father came to us and said, you know, you guys are crazy, there's this fantastic singer called Julio Inglesias, enormous in Spanish, because we'd never heard of him. And you know, we're sitting in New York, who the hell's Julio Inglesias? You really must sign him because he can speak some English, and he's starting to sing in English. And if somebody will work with him on his English and get him the right producers, he'll sell records everywhere in the world. It's an incredibly distinctive voice. So Julio came to New York, and we met with him, and he actually sang in the office, and he sang Beguine to Beguine. And we didn't know, but it was the only song he could sing in English, and that, the words that he could say, Beguine to Beguine, those were probably the only English words he knew, right? Anyway, but we decided to sign him, and it was incredibly complicated because he was also signed to a Spanish record company, so we had to make a deal with them to get him out of the Spanish record company and then sign him to CBS. And eventually the signing came round. So we all congregated, the lawyers who put all these contracts together and everything else, congregated in Paris to sign the agreements. So Julio was signed up. And part of it was that the same day these contracts were signed, they had to be notarized by the Dutch Antilles consulate in Paris, which all had something to do with some weird and wonderful tax scheme that Julio was involved with. So we had made, one of the lawyers had made contact with the Dutch Antilles consulate and said, we have some documents, didn't say who it was or what it was. So we have some documents that have to be notarized and they have to be done on this day, such and such a day. Can we come and have them notarized? And they were given an appointment at sort of like 3 o'clock or 3:30, kind of these documents notarized. So we signed all these documents, and then of course there was the obligatory glass of champagne and and everybody's having a kiss and a cuddle, and finally I said, come on guys, we've got to go and get these documents notarized because of Julio's tax scheme, and so Julio had to come with us. So there was me, Julio, and one of the lawyers jumped in the car, and of course we just sort of naively assumed that the Dutch Antilles consulate would be somewhere in the centre of Paris, because the Dutch Antilles consulate is not exactly a huge organisation, so it was sort of way out, it was way the other side of the peripherique. So off we set. Of course now it's sort of like 3:45, the traffic's building up. Anyway, so we don't actually get there until about 4:30. It was a sort of funny old building with some stone steps that you went up, and the consulate was on the first floor. And it had a window, one of those sort of windows with that you couldn't see through, opaque glass. So that with a sort of a bell, and you rang the bell, and obviously somebody pulled up the window, and that was their sort of office, And then there were some doors that went into the consulate. So I said, it was freezing cold, so I said, you stay here in the car, let me go up and get this thing going. So I went up the stairs and pressed the button, and the window went up. There's this extraordinary ugly receptionist sort of pokes her head out, and I said, I'm here to have some documents notarized. And she said, we're shut. I'm doing it now. I said, no, this can't be happening, right? So sort of took a deep breath, pressed the bell again, and she pulled up the window again, and I said, no, you don't understand. We've made an appointment with the consulate, speaking to her, like she can't understand English, English is probably as good as mine. I said, we made an appointment, we're here to have the documents notarized. I'm sorry we're a bit late, but we didn't realise exactly where you were, Bang, we're shut. So I thought, oh. So I go downstairs, I get Julio, right? I said, Julio, I need you. So I get him up, I put him in front of the glass, right? And I ring the bell. Up comes the window. The woman looks, this time she sees Julio Inglesias. Oh my God! It's Julio Inglesias! Oh my God! So I push Julio aside. Thank you guys, you've done your bit, right? So I said, okay, we've got an appointment for Mr. Iglesias to sign and notarize his documents. Can we please get it done? Window goes down. So we stand around. We're standing around. There's a lawyer, me and Julio, and we're standing around. I'm thinking, hope something's going to happen. And all of a sudden, to our sort of left, there's these double doors, big, great oak double doors, and the big double doors open. Out comes this guy, and he's got like a uniform on, and he's got like spurs, riding boots, and big red striped trousers, and jacket, and a big hat with loads of feathers in it, great big row of medals, and a sword. And he's the consular. And he's obviously done a quick change, especially for Julio, right? So, gentlemen, come in. So we go in, and there's like a big sitting room, sort of parlour type thing. And he said, before we formally notarise the documents, he said, may I please present my wife and daughter? So we went, so of course, Julio's showing, yes, of course. Anyway, out comes sort of widow Twanky and Dr. who looked like they just stepped out of an opera. I mean, they had these great big ball gowns on. I mean, this is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Strapless ball gowns, and also their hair had quickly been done up and the makeup applied and everything else. And so we all sort of sat there with the consulate with his sword and the daughter, the ugly daughter and the ugly wife, and all made up and everything else. And then, some wrinkled old retainer came in who'd obviously just been told to put a tie on, with a tray of sherry, and we sat there and drank sherry, and the guy wouldn't let us go. He wouldn't let us go. It was like, so notarise the documents. I'm saying, can we notarise the documents? In a minute. We'd like to hear from Mr. Inglesias. What is his next album going to be? And he'd say to his wife, what is your favourite song? And then he'd what is your favourite song? And why did you write that song? And we were there till like 7:30 at night. And finally, about 7:30, I said, look, we just have to go. Will you please? And out came the great big stamp, and Julio signed the documents, and the guy stamped, and he kept getting his sword caught in the armchair and then we were allowed to leave, just being there about 2.5 hours.